Peace. Good evening. I'd like to welcome you back to another edition of the Foul Playland. As always, I'm your foul player. A couple of days ago, there was a arrest. Actually, 4 days ago, there was an arrest here in the New York City area, and a 15-year-old high school student who had just arrived to the country from Venezuela was arrested for shooting a gun in the Times Square area. From the story that I've been told or that I've read, was that the young man in question, who again newly arrived migrant from Venezuela, that was probably I'll get to that in a second. But from what I was told was that him and another person were attempting to steal from a sneaker store in Times Square. It's a store called JD Sports. I've actually never went into it, I believe. It was built during the COVID times, and I drive to that area almost every day back then, especially, and I remember it being built up, and I remember thinking like, wow, what a terrible investment that is, because it was coming up during a time in which all those stores in the Times Square area were shuttered. Nevertheless, it's a higher end shoe store from what I was told. It's like a better version of Foot Locker, which Foot Locker already sucks. I don't know why we need another one. But this young man was attempting to steal, and he was confronted by security. He ended up brandishing a weapon, a 45 caliber handgun, and fired it, and it ended up hitting a Brazilian tourist. She was actually cute too. Um, Luckily or thankfully, the tourist wasn't struck in a vital organ or anything like that. I think she was struck in the leg, and she's come out of it okay. She's not dead. But the thing that started got my gears going is that I was raised in New York City. If you guys don't know, I'm from Brooklyn, Sunset Park, New York City. Was there my whole life, except for the first month of my life. Every other moment of my life I spent in Sunset Park, Brooklyn. Really, Sunset Park, Brooklyn. Never been to Central Park, or always in my hood. But for the most part, one thing I do know though is that I've known many people that were looking to acquire a firearm illicitly in New York City, and how much of a pain in the ass that was. From the time I was a kid, because I remember watching the movie Juice with Tupac and Omar Epps, and I remember he was in need of a gun, or the main character was in need of a gun because the evil character in the movie, which was played by Tupac, was looking to do him harm, and he knew that the Tupac character was brandishing a weapon. So the Omar Epps character, whatever his name was, had to buy a gun from a lady who sold weapons, and I believe he went to her house with $25 or $50, and she ended up giving him a 25 caliber handgun. I remember when I was a kid though, thinking like watching that movie and thinking like, man, if he was able to buy a gun for, I think it was $25 or $50, then if I'm able to save $100 by the time I hit 14, finding the gun should be easy. There should be tons of people with weapons, and that's not the case. I'm gonna tell you guys right now, if you were to buy a handgun, and I'm talking in the prior to 2000, when I knew more of these things than I do now, but illicitly in New York City, to buy a handgun in those times, like not even a new handgun, this is a suspicious handgun. You're talking about $500 and up. And I'm talking way up. I'm like, if the gun looks respectable, you're talking about $1,000 or more. And not only that, it's not like if you have $1,000 that you're gonna have a bunch of people that are tripping over themselves trying to sell you weaponry. You may have $5,000 and you'll look for a whole year and not find one weapon. I knew people that were actively in the street, constantly looking for weapons, and big groups of people wouldn't have more than 4 weapons amongst them, and that was a lot. So big gangs of dudes that best case scenario, were able to brandish 4 firearms among the 4 of them. Now, is weaponry easier to find now than back then? Maybe, I don't know. But New York's gun laws are pretty strict. Like Illinois, Chicago, you see a lot of people that do brandish firearms in the city of Chicago, but Illinois has decent gun laws. So, by way of Chicago being in Illinois, or a city in the state of Illinois, you're probably able to get guns far easier than you could in New York. Now, I don't know what the condition of gun acquirement is in New York, but you don't see like people many times in New York City, like hood videos and whatnot, brandishing big rifles and stuff like that here and there. But it's usually a clown that's posing with the weapon that he got from his uncle or some shit at his uncle's house. But to find a gun of any caliber in New York is really, really hard. But this immigrant who just got here, 15 years old, high school student, he's able to not only find somebody that will sell him a gun, but he was also able to come up with the money. Whether that's $500 or $1,000, I don't know. He had an extra 500 sitting around, you know. And when I mentioned the example before of the big groups of people that I knew that would have 4 weapons amongst them, you're talking about everybody and their mother pooling money together to try to buy a firearm in the streets. That is, people that are not 15 years old, let alone, pooling their money together to come up with 1,000 or 2,000, whatever it costs to buy a firearm back then. Now, this kid who's attending high school in New York City, from the story I was told, which also sucks too, for something I'll mention next, but this kid was able to come up with whatever amount of money extra from, and not buy, clothes or some stupid wireless headphones or haircuts. He took that extra money, wherever the hell he got it from, and somehow found his way into acquiring this weapon that was then used on a tourist in Times Square. Also sucked to find out that kid was actually attending high school, because my son is at the age where he finished high school. But imagine if your kid is attending school in New York City, where it's already rough. School sucks in New York. And I went to one of the worst schools. I went to Fort Hamilton, which was a really nice school. But then I actually, when I got kicked out of Fort Hamilton, I went to the worst school in New York at that time, which was Jungle J. And it was bad then. But now you're bringing in people that have nothing to live for, teenagers, I'm saying, that are just as tough as anybody that was in John Jay when I was in high school, and being thrown right on top of that population in John Jay, in Morrow, in you name Midwood High School, whatever high school in Brooklyn you want to throw out there, Erasmus, Loft, Lincoln. But all these schools were already inundated. They had too many students as is, to where now you're wedging in students that don't even know English, that by nature they're going to form packs among themselves because they're not of the country and they don't know English, they don't know the lingo, that are not pussies. These kids ain't like chumps. They ventured several countries and landscapes to get here, and nobody wants them here. So I mean, they're gonna have a little bit of a spirit decor just by them existing, and they're not like coming into the country with their hat in hand, looking for a savior in a church. No, they're coming into this country blasting shit with somehow these kids that are 15, which probably the illest hood kid in New York will have a devil of a time finding a gun at 15 years old. But somehow this migrant was able to land one. Now, I think to myself, how the fuck did this kid land that gun? Which brings me to my worst case scenario. What if this kid knew source? I mean, what my thinking with that is that similar to what I gave in my Israel Hamas example, in which if you believe the narrative that a small number of people that weren't really armed that great were able to go into a country that has one of the illest militaries in the whole world in Israel, but also has a population that is highly armed, able to acquire weaponry, and you have a small group of people from Gaza, Arabs, that aren't even allowed to have weapons, that somehow, with some propeller bikes that fly and a couple of rifles and handguns, were able to cause so much havoc, if you believe the official narrative, in Israel. Now, what if these packs of assholes who are already bonded by their um, not by the fact that nobody wants them here, by the fact that they're not of this country, seemingly they don't like the country, or seem when you from the videos that I've shown on this channel, you could see their attitude. And I'm not saying this is everybody, but for these malcontents, these bad people that are coming up into New York City and into America, you see that they don't have the outlook, at least from my perception, of people that are coming here to try to make a way. Nah, most of them just hang out for the most part. I'm talking about in New York City. The people that I've seen with my own eyes, for the most part, all these dudes that are coming, again, majority men, and majority of them don't have bike jobs delivering shit or chopping up onions at some restaurant or washing dishes like a lot of you think they do. A lot of these dudes, for the most part, all they do is hang out the whole day. Like, whether that be Times Square, whether that be in my neighborhood in Fifth Avenue, where they just chill, whether that be on Atlantic, seen some in Fulton, in Brooklyn area, if you guys aren't familiar. But for the most part, you don't see these dudes getting busy and trying to pursue their American dream. I think a lot of these dudes are trying to pursue the American dream of Scarface rather than Vito Corleone, if you will. But let me know what you guys think. Again, please help me fight the algorithm. Like, share, comment, subscribe. Really does help. And I'm really getting plastered by this platform in YouTube. They're not helping me one iota. In fact, they're thwarting me as much as they could. But together, you, me, we'll fight them. And you'll be informed along the way as best as I can. But hope you guys have a wonderful Valentine's Day. Much love. Peace.